Hey everyone, welcome to the Ron Johnson Show, and I'm your host, Ron Johnson. Today we have to talk about this, the Timberwolves. We're going to talk about the Gophers. There's some transfer stuff going on that's very confusing, and I feel like kids now are just transferring because they can do it. And so they have to rein this in or it's going to get out of control because even free agency can't go this crazy. But we got to talk about the Timberwolves because I was at the game. They lost to the Pistons on New Year's Eve. But then they turn around and beat the best team in the West? We'll talk about that coming up next on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota Podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Ron Johnson Show, and I'm your host, Ron Johnson. It's a snowy day in Minnesota, so I don't know where you're listening from, but I hope you're not dealing with what we're dealing with. It snowed all of yesterday. There was a snow day for kids yesterday and today as well. And it's going to snow today until about 2 p.m. So, you know, we're snowed in. So when we're snowed in, what else is there to talk about? Sports. We have Courtney Cronin coming up today on the Ron Johnson Show, ESPN analyst. She's going to talk to us about this Vikings Bears game, as well as Damar Hamlin. She had a big opinion on ESPN, and I'm interested to hear her thoughts on that so she can extrapolate and continue to explain her thoughts on where the NFL could take this season. And also, we have to dive into the transfer portal, as I said in the cold open. But you know what? Before we do that, I want you guys to remember the Locked On Sports app. It's on the Amazon Fire and the Roku apps on your TV. Just go to your apps, hit search Locked On Sports Minnesota. You can download the app right to your TV, get all of our videos, all of our shows, an instant podcast after every game. So you can see it all right when it gets loaded up because it's right there in your app. And if it's not loaded, it'll be there. You can go back and watch all the interviews. Adam Thielen, Cam Bynum. Go check them out. But before I bring my producer in, Sam Eksterman, or once I bring my producer, Sam Eksterman, we have to talk about this. We're going to talk Vikings, and we're going to talk a ton of Bears. Don't worry about that. Second segment, third segment. We got a ton of Bears, ton of Vikings talk coming up with Courtney Cronin. So I want to talk a little bit about the Gophers. And as I bring Sam Eksterman to the show, my producer, Sam, when you think about Gophers football, you don't think of big moves. You don't think about big offseason moves. The Gophers, for the last 6 to 7 years, have just been consistent. PJ Fleck's been very consistent with recruiting just enough to get you excited, but not like names where you worry about other schools coming to poach them. The Gophers lose guys because they're just not happy with what they thought and where they are. What they thought and where they are. And so what they thought was maybe like, oh man, Minnesota they're okay, but they're not as recruit. They don't recruit like Ohio State. They don't recruit like Michigan. So I can go to Minnesota and I can be a star right away. But then they get here and it doesn't work out the way they think it should work out. So they want to transfer. I'm seeing freshmen transfer. I never understood that as a freshman. You're an 18-year-old kid out of high school and you decide to transfer. Why? You haven't even matured yet. Some of you haven't even hit full puberty yet. Some freshmen are 17. Seriously. They haven't hit that grown man puberty yet. Some of them can't even grow beards and mustaches yet. And they're like, this is not for me. I'm going to transfer. Now, I do know there's outside circumstances. There's school. There's relationships with coaches. There's feeling disrespected. I get all of that. There's that, of course. So I can't deny that. We don't know what goes on behind the scenes. But for the players that it seems like it's just a freshman being asked to redshirt, I look at freshmen that I play with that went to the NFL that either sat out a year or two or redshirted. Mike Lehan, friend of the show. He's been on. Mike Lehan, my freshman year, he redshirted. One of the top players in Minnesota, freak athlete, 4.4 speed. They redshirted him. All of a sudden, freshman year, redshirt freshman year, doesn't play much. Willie Middlebrooks, Delvin Jones, Jimmy Wyrick, all NFL guys. Mike Lehan, sophomore year, starts to play a little bit, but it's not starting. Still not the guy. It's not starting. Doesn't transfer. Doesn't, because Mike Lehan, with his speed, his ability, and clearly NFL guy, played for a couple years, so he's definitely a great player. He could have went to any other, because back in the day, you couldn't transfer in Big Ten to Big Ten, but he could have went over to Georgia Tech. They probably would have took him. He could have went to Syracuse. He could have went to any of those schools, Power 5 type schools. North Carolina probably would have took him. I mean, Mike Lehan was a great athlete. Junior, senior, because I was gone by then, and then his senior year, his redshirt senior year, balled out. He was the guy, him and Yuki Dozier. But that's the thing. So many guys think, I need to transfer and get out of here. Jared Ellerson, receiver I played with, redshirted because he was a freshman when I was a senior. So he definitely wasn't going to get me out of there. But he decided to wait. The next year, though, he has to deal with, he has Ernie Wheelwright in there. You know, like he's played behind some NFL caliber receivers, Logan Payne, Ernie Wheelwright. You know, like, and Jared Ellerson waited. Jared Ellerson ends up playing his senior year, and then he goes on and gets a tryout with the Bears. So again, NFL caliber type of receiver, has the size 6'3", but doesn't just leave and go back to, because he's from Ohio. He could have left and went to Miami of Ohio or somewhere like that. But no, he's like, you know what? I'm gonna earn my way on the field. And so many players, and there's the thing too about our team. Like a lot of guys maybe didn't leave because they were having fun. They had really good friends on the team. I don't understand this, and I bring this up, people. So for people wondering where I'm going with this, former Gophers, and there's a tweet out there by Andy Greeter, and then I quote tweeted it as well, so you can see that on Twitter. That's 3 Ron Johnson on Twitter. I sat there and looked at the tweet, and before I did, I said, you know what? Kai Thomas and Bucky Irvin both transferred. Bucky Irvin is balling for Oregon, so hey, he made a good decision. Nike money out there, crazy. I get it. But Kai Thomas transferred probably not realizing Bucky was going to transfer. Because if Kai knew Bucky was going to leave, he doesn't need to leave because then it's him and Mo Ibrahim. In my opinion, he was a little bit better back than Trey Potts. Not much better, but I thought he had a little bit more quick twitch. So I feel like as a compliment to Mo, he fits. And he leaves, goes to Kansas, 162 yards, 2 touchdowns. Now he wants to leave Kansas. This kid's going to transfer 2 schools in 2 years. He's going to be on his 3rd school in 3 years. That's crazy to me that the kids are just jumping out into the portal to transfer. And I just feel like kids need to just wait. And it's so much like Twitter, Instagram. I get it. It's all about filters and instant gratification. People can tell you right away, I love you. Ooh, you're great. Ooh, fire emoji. People can tell you right away what they think about you. Now there's a negative to that. They can tell you suck. They can tell you that outfit is ugly. They can tell you that Badger sweatshirt you thought was cute is the worst sweatshirt you've ever decided to buy. I don't care how nice it looks. It could have Louis Vuitton on it. If it says Badgers, it's terrible. But that's the one thing that I think people don't understand is this transfer portal is going to start to hurt kids because the minute they don't feel good about where they're at, they're not going to work harder. They're just going to leave. And that's going to be in them when they get older. Because every job, there's always pros and cons to every job. And Sam, you've been there as well. We've all been there. Mm-hmm. You're in a job and you're like, I don't know. But you have that, I can't just leave though, because you got kids, you got a house, you got a mortgage, you got a car note. I think that's where these kids are. They don't have that. So when they transfer, it's like, look, I'm going to transfer. Like when you get your degree finally, and you'll get it, hopefully you'll get it. That's the other thing. These kids are transferring and don't even know if these credits, you got credits from Minnesota, you got credits from Kansas. You don't know if the next school's going to take those credits. So you're coming in as a 3rd, 4th year freshman as far as academia goes. We forget you're a student athlete. It's about that degree because the chance of you make it to the NFL, if you're not a out the gate guy that people are like, oh, this guy is it. I don't know. Like, wait. Learn, get bigger, stronger, faster, and then get out there. But if you've already put stuff on tape and they can look at you on tape and say, is this kid going to get better? Could he be in the NFL? Maybe. But Sam, we're going to go with you on this. What do you think about this transfer portal? Because high school kids are getting hurt as well, because now if I'm a college coach and I was going to go recruit this kid at Cooper High School, I'm like, wait, this Kai Thomas kid has played 2 years of college football, big time football at Kent State. Kenny Burns, former goal. I mean, why not transfer to Kent State with Kenny Burns? He was your coach. Now he's the head coach. You are probably better than a lot of the Kent State running backs, if not all of them. I could see Kai Thomas going there. Who knows? But what do you think?
Yeah, so yesterday, another Gophers move. Ike White,
yes,
freshman receiver, decided to transfer. I don't know Ike White's motivations entirely, but it sounds like Ike White might have been willing to stick around. The Gophers brought in several transfer receivers because they had to play the game. They had to go and get some guys in the transfer portal. So it hurts guys like Ike White, who might actually, Ron, they might want to stick around. Yeah. They might want to put in the work. But then when the team around them goes and gets players that are going to be above them in the pecking order, it kind of forces their hand a little bit, right? Like it's not as if, okay, I see my path. This guy's going to graduate. Then I'm going to be the number 3 guy. I'm going to be the number 2 guy. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait. They just went out and they got two more guys. I'm right back where I started. It de-incentivizes those younger players to sort of like map out how they're going to get to where they want to be because they just keep getting jumped. They can't really climb the ladder like they used to because the team keeps bringing people in. So I remember going to a lot of senior day ceremonies, and these 4-year, 5-year seniors are celebrated. How rare is that going to be now, Ron, to have those long-term guys that stick around from freshman to senior year, and they have that great moment at the end of their career? It's going to get rarer and rarer. And that's a shame because that's always a really cool moment to get attached to someone for 4 years and then send them off their senior year. That's kind of the sentimental part of me that says, man, this is too bad.
Yeah, and the Ike White one, that was kind of the freshman I brought up. I didn't want to go too deep into it because, again, I don't know the story there. But you're right. You bring in Corey Crooms, really good receiver. You bring in Elijah Spencer, really good receiver. Daniel Jackson clearly has earned his way in that group. Michael Brown-Stevens stepped away from the team, so my guess is he's going to enter the transfer portal at some point because if those that haven't noticed, he hadn't been there the last 2 weeks of the season. He didn't participate in the bowl game. So that's the other reason for the transfer portal, because players are going to mentally get there. But what I think about Michael Brown-Stevens, my guess is when he saw those transfer portal guys, he was like, look, I see the writing on the wall. I see the comments on Twitter. I know I'm not attacking the ball. I'm not making big catches in the 8th, and I'm leaving 8th and out to dry. If he just makes a couple of those catches and goes up with his hands, even knocks them down so not interceptions, Gophers probably win some of those games. Illinois, Purdue. Michael Brown-Stevens had a chance. They gave him a chance. He just couldn't get it done. I feel like Corey Crooms, Elijah Spencer, from watching their film, they're going to attack the ball. We got a little bit of time left before we bring in Courtney Cronin and the Hanging with Ron Johnson segment. Before we do that, just last quick one. We said we're going to talk about it. Timberwolves, and we'll do more of this on Friday, but Timberwolves are very concerned. I'm concerned. And this is where I go. If you can beat the number 1 team in the West, the Nuggets, but you lose to the Pistons. And I was at the Pistons game New Year's Eve, got to take my family. Thanks to Jim Peterson for allowing us to come down on the court. We got to take pictures on the court and hang out. He love him. Talked to him after the game for a long time with the family and his wife and Rebecca Bronson and her family and her kid, and got to, it was a great New Year's Eve experience for my kids, but they lost. And it was the Pistons. Jaden Ivey, I held Jaden as a baby. So Jaden Ivey, Javen Hunter's his dad, played with me with the Ravens, grew up together in Detroit. He didn't even play much. And I was like, man, if Jaden Ivey goes off, he didn't even play much. Like their second unit was going. And the Timberwolves were up 21-7 at one point and then lost the game. And then they turned around. So I feel like it's a mental thing. Like the fact that you could do that, and maybe the Nuggets were like, this is the Timberwolves. We're not going to play hard against them. I don't know. So we'll see in the next couple games. But we talked about that 4-game stretch. They lost all 4. They lost all 4 games.
Yep.
Last roundtable, we said the next 4 games, what needs to happen? I said they would get maybe 1. They couldn't even get that 1. I knew they wouldn't go 2-2. That group was too hard. But hey, Timberwolves got to figure it out, people. We'll talk about that more on the roundtable on Friday. Where this Timberwolves team's going, what do they need? I saw what they needed. So I'm excited to talk about that Friday in depth because I see exactly what they need. And it's a small piece that they got to flip a switch and they say, this is what we need. This is what you got to do every game. Because you can watch the Pistons and see it. You can watch the Warriors and see it. The Timberwolves have it, but they just don't flip that switch enough. And they just got to do it. At some point, you just got to do it and say it, and it becomes mental. Michael Jordan said it. It's just one of those things. And we'll talk about that on the roundtable. We were supposed to have Courtney Cronin with ESPN, but, the TV business, everything is fluid. Things happen. The weather. There's a lot going on, as we know, with DeMar Hamlin. So we are going to try to postpone that one until tomorrow, as we have some things in the works we have to work through with Courtney. And we know that her schedule is crazy right now at ESPN because everything is live and fluid. So we definitely understand that. We're going to talk about Vikings Bears because we have to talk about this game. This game, it doesn't matter when you think about seeding. 2 and 3 at the moment theoretically doesn't matter. Now, it does matter if you're talking about who you're going to play and if you want to host an additional home game. But is health more important than football? Is health more important than seeding? And we're going to talk about that next in the Hanging Around Johnson segment, but it's just going to be me and Sam. Sam's going to hang with me today. I enjoy hanging with Sam. He's a good guy. He's come over to the other side of hating on Kirk Cousins. We know that. But I want to make sure everybody knows. Check out our Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast on YouTube, following every Twins, Vikings, Wild, or Wolves game. Our Locked On team hosts are broadcasting live with team insiders. Never miss a podcast by subscribing to Locked On Sports Minnesota on YouTube. And we have a word from our sponsors.
Well, there's some big line movement on BetOnline in this Vikings-Bears game. It started around 3.5, and now it's 6. The Vikings are favored by 6 at Chicago. Clearly, the bettors think that Chicago is going to go for that number 1 pick. You can place that at BetOnline. You can check out the over-unders, the money lines, the spreads for every game, every league, every sport. It's bowl season. It's NBA. It's NFL. Vikings -6 on Sunday. You can find sports podcasts at BetOnline as well. Check it out on your mobile device. BetOnline, where the game starts.
And now, as I said, coming up in the Hang with Ron Johnson segment, I got Sam Ekstrom. Sam Ekstrom's going to hang with Ron Johnson today, so I got a couple questions for Sam. We're going to talk Vikings, Bears, of course, because that's the big game this week. We're going to talk a little bit. We can dive into the Timberwolves a little bit more, but we're going to talk Vikings, Bears, because this game, to me, Sam, when you look at Brian O'Neill going on IR, you look at Austin Schlottmann. This is the thing. Who would have thought we were clamoring for Austin Schlottmann to be healthy? Like, at no point this season did you think Austin Schlottmann, we need him to be healthy. With all the musical chairs, I guess you want to call it, of injuries to the offensive line and Reed having to come in and play center, you almost forgot some of the issues that they faced at right guard. Like, nobody was even talking about the right guard after the tackle and the center went down. After the center has been out for a while too, Ed Ingram kind of got pushed to the side. Like, nobody was harping on, because Ed Ingram had some great plays here. And I don't know if it was many. He's like, man, okay, I got to pick my game up. I don't have help or what. But he did turn it on at times and then have those mental lapses. And so when I look at that Vikings-Packers game first, going into this Bears game, here's first, and I'll let you go after this.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing that has to change against the Bears and the playoffs. The Vikings are a team. Here's my take on this. The Vikings are a team that can't have mental lapses. I mean, 0, because they can't overcome them. They're a team. And so the first mental lapse I'm going to go with is there was a tweet of a video of the kickoff return for a touchdown. If you watch the L5, which is the guy to the left of the kicker, his lane is normally 3 yards. It's hash, and then 1 to 2 yards outside the hash one way, 1 to 2 yards outside the hash this way, and you stay in your lane. Why? Because if everybody runs down, all 10 players run down in their lanes, the main 8 go down, and then the 2 outside guys they fold in, and they're the safeties, as you want to call it, in case a guy squeaks through. Well, the safeties, I don't know what they were doing, but their fold was really lazy, as if like, oh, we're just going to make this tackle. That's why you got to do kickoff return and kickoff, and it's got to be sound every time, because the minute you have lackadaisicalness, which is those two guys didn't really come in quick and then try to, hit their blocker, separate, and get to the runner, he squeaks through. I think it was Jalen Naylor, and I hate to say that, but he goes up and he drifts past the R5, past the R4, almost to the R3. Like, he's 3 lanes over. That's like being in your car in cruise control and you just start drifting from the left lane all the way to the right lane without your blinker. Like, he just drifted. And so not only did nobody have to block him, because they're like, the guy that was coming down to block him in that lane is like, oh wait, where is everybody? Like, and so that was his lane is where the touchdown, like, that's where it happened. And I get the counter motion. So a counter motion, for people to understand, is the returner starts out one way and then goes back the other way. And he does it on purpose. He starts off one way, knowing I'm going to try to get as many people as I can to think I'm going to go that way, and boom. And it's just a counter return. And his counter action got Jalen Naylor. Jalen Naylor drifted over as if like, oh, he's going that way, I'm going to go make the tackle. Stop playing hero ball on special teams. That's where teams get in trouble. One, trying to go block a punt when you're not supposed to. So either you let your guy go and they have a return set up, or you hit the punter. Don't play hero ball on special teams. Special teams is supposed to be just get the ball back or keep them in a position to help your offense or defense out. Don't be a hero unless it's absolutely necessary. Kick returns call, punt blocks call. So Jalen Naylor, for me, that was the one. That was the lackadaisical moment that even the special teams could. I think he never went back out on kickoff after that. But that's the lackadaisical moment that these Vikings can't overcome. They cannot do that. They have to be sound on all phases, offense, defense, and special teams, and coaching. They have to be sound. I mean, clearly they can come back, but if you give up too much and you get too down on yourself, normally the Vikings were the team that would change the momentum with the special teams play, and they did it with the pump block, and then they got killed. And then not only did it get killed, then they had a return against themselves. So that's where I go for the first one. They have to change that up if they're going to beat the Bears. Not only the Bears, but in the playoffs, make a run. Is there anything that you saw in the Packers game that has to change against this Bears team?
I'd like to see a run game that's a little more consistent.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like in the games where they've gotten smoked, usually the run game never gets going. And I know that this is a pass-first team.
Yep.
But it sure helps if you can establish Dalvin at 4 or 5 yards a carry. A lot of negative runs.
Yep.
And I think O'Connell is pretty quick to go away from it. And it's funny because we always got on Zimmer for establishing the run way too long. Like, stop it, Mike. We just need to throw.
Yep.
And now I think Kevin's a little more on the other side of the extreme. And I'd rather pass than run, but I think that Dalvin Cook needs to be a factor. If you're going to have playoff success, if you're going to control the clock, you're going to help your defense out, Dalvin Cook needs to be a factor. So I'd like to see him maybe get a little more work early and try to set the pass up. And it's counter to what I've usually asked for, but I would like to see a little more of that. And I think that's a good way to get your offensive line feeling good about itself. Like, you've got all these new guys on the offensive line now. Let them run block. I think that's a little easier, maybe a little more confidence building than having to drop back a lot of times. I don't want to get Kirk Cousins hurt either. So that's why I think this needs to be a run first game plan. If you lose the game, it's not the end of the world. But go into this and try to get your offensive line in rhythm, get your run game feeling a little better. And if Justin Jefferson doesn't get 100 yards, I think that's okay.
Right. Yeah, and this is the thing about it. Justin Jefferson, like, you're not going to get to 2,000. I mean, now, granted, it is the Bears, but that surface, we know that surface is bad. Their season is over. So that grounds crew even knows that the Bears were talking about getting a new stadium outside the city. So the city's not taking care of that field the way they should. You could see it on TV. You could see it in the way that the games have gone. Eagles, everybody that played at the Bears, doesn't look great. The Bears are the worst run defense in the NFL. They've given up almost 3,000 yards on the ground, 28-96. You have to be able to run the ball enough. Everybody else is doing it. You have a really good running back. Now, your offensive line is but you have Ezra Cleveland and you have Christian Darrisaw to the left. Just run outside zone left. Run counter, left. Start right, counter back, left. Let your power guys on the left side of that line do what they do best. It's like John Madden. If they can't stop it, keep doing it. Even run outside the other way, because whoever plays tackle, we'll see. Oli Udo, who knows? But whoever plays tackle should be able to at least hold a guy long enough that Dalvin Cook can get outside, and now it's just receivers blocking, tight ends blocking on the perimeter, and now he can kind of pick and choose his space. Receivers have to be able to hold the DBs up either at the line or 2 or 3 yards down the line. If those DBs start getting, nosy, that's when you run play action. But you should be able to run on this team, because passing, and I don't know if it's because of how the games have gone with the Bears, because they run, so other teams just run. They're not allowing a lot of passing yards. They have the best passing defense in the NFL. So it's like it goes both ways. They're not giving up a lot of passing yards, but they're giving up a ton of running yards. So don't force a square peg in a round hole. Like, we know Justin Jefferson can get going, but this might not be the game to do it. Run the ball. Like, this is the game to do it. Alexander Mattison and Dalvin Cook, put CJ Ham in the game. You don't need to go 3 wides. Go big. See what happens. Put 2 receivers in there and 2 tight ends. You got Johnny Munt. Put him in there. See what happens. You got CJ Ham, Johnny Munt, and TJ Hawkinson. And you got Thielen or KJ Osborne and Justin Jefferson out there. Let Thielen rest. KJ Osborne, Justin Jefferson. Now you might get some better matchups. You might get man coverage. It's easier to see the double team when you only have Justin Jefferson over there. You don't have to figure out what they're doing. If you motion Justin and nobody goes, it's zone. Run a zone beater. Send Justin on a deep corner. Send KJ Osborne on like a sit route behind it. Some kind of curl underneath it. Deep post, dig. Run some zone beaters. Figure out what they're in. But that's where the Vikings have to change. They have to be able to run the ball on this Bears team. And Sam, when we talk about, because I talked about this, I said health matters over seeding, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
If it were you and this was your team, would you rest as many players as possible, seeing what happened last week, losing your starting tackle and your backup center, knowing that, you know what, let's just try to get healthy. Let's just try to get healthy in this game so that I can move on and make it to the playoffs healthy? Would you rest your players against the Bears?
So I want to say yes, because I really have no faith that San Francisco is going to lose.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a trickle-down effect, Ron. Like, you only have 48 guys dressed. So you can't just go straight backups. It's not a preseason game.
Right.
And if you had, like, for instance, if you say, all right, we want Christian Darrisaw out of the game, we don't want him getting another concussion. All right, well, that means that you probably have to play your backup quarterback because you don't want Kirk Cousins behind a bad offensive line. You don't want to have Dalvin Cook behind a bad offensive line. But you probably can't rest everybody you want to rest. I mean, you would still be forced to play like a KJ Osborne. You would still be forced to play probably an Alexander Mattison. And, at least your number 2s would still be logging big reps.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's a middle ground. I think that you probably play your starters the first half. I think you see how it's going, and probably, take the pedal off in the second half. And I think whether you're winning or losing, I don't know if it's really that critical.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that you probably try to limit, but not completely eliminate some of those starters. Because I think if you do that, I think it's just a slippery slope when you have some starters playing with backups. I don't know if that's a good formula either.
Yeah. Well, coming up next, we got the Daily 3. Before we jump into the Daily 3, quick, Sam, like I said, a little bit to extrapolate a little bit more on the Timberwolves. Here's where I go with that. And we'll talk again. We'll talk about it. I always like to kind of end it quick with a little basketball. It's basketball season.
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards. Anthony Edwards has to be the guy. He has to be the guy every single time. And to say he can't do it, you're admitting you didn't draft the right guy. I think they drafted the right guy. I watched him in that Pistons game. Because I play basketball. So when I mean watch him, I mean when you see him handle the ball, when you see him confident, when he crossover, step back, jumper, and it's pure. Next time down, crossover, step back, side step, boom, hit another jumper. Next series down, come down, knock down a 3. That tells me he can do it. Now, can he do it every night? That's where you have to understand where you can get the most out of him. Can he sustain that? What does he need around him to do that? Do they need to understand, you like D'Angelo Russell, when the shot goes up, you don't stand there and get mad you didn't take the shot. You go carve out spots. You look at point guards that rebound well, that's the teams that tend to do well long term. You got to carve out space. Kyrie Irving had a put back, tip back dunk, and he's the PG. You gotta do other stuff than stand around sometimes. And that's where I feel like the Timberwolves get caught up. They play like they're at the rec, where if one guy's hot, the next shot, the third, fourth shot that goes up, now everybody's just watching like, oh, this guy's on. Like, no, you carve out spots every single time to box out. Because then when he misses, he's made three, he misses one, you get the rebound and put it back. Now you're on go mode. You're like, we're going. We're in this. There's no team that can stop. Like, that's what I feel like they're missing. They're missing that guy that's just going to keep coming down every time and knocking it down. And then when he misses, guys are ready to rebound. That's the small parts of their team. And then they don't have the ability to slow down teams. Like, once the Pistons got going, it was like you couldn't stop it. It was a train. Like, they just kept going down, and the Pistons would score. Timberwolves come down and do something stupid. Pistons come down, score. Timberwolves come down, do something. It's like, wait a minute, you guys were just up 10, and now the Pistons are about to go up 1. And that's when you can hear the crowd booing. You can see the crowd getting frustrated. And then the Pistons, I think, went up 8. That's the things that can't happen. It can't happen because that team's not good. They had won, up to that point, they had won 9 games. They were like 9-28 or 9-29, and you got beat. Mm-hmm. So, again, we'll talk about this more on the roundtable on Friday, but the Timberwolves, I said this last year, Anthony Edwards has to be the guy. Last season, I said this. He has to be the guy. And it's so often that D'Angelo Russell takes that shot and it's not his turn. It's not. You are the point guard. Just be the point guard. I know you want to be a scorer. I know you want to do the ice cold veins. Let Anthony Edwards do it. So when we jump into the Daily 3 next, we got the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Sam might throw some curveballs at me because our questions, of course, we were set for Courtney Cronin to be here. But again, we'll have her tomorrow. And hey, people, remember, when you subscribe to Locked On Sports Minnesota, you're getting endless Vikings talk with local experts. Subscribe to the free Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast feed, wherever you find your podcast, and find our videos on the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. And we have a word from our sponsors.
Thanks for making the Ron Johnson Show your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. The biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's Take of the Day. Locked On Sports Today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back with me and Sam, and now it's time for the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away, Sam.
All right, I got a Bears question. This would have been great to ask Courtney, and if we get her back on, we will ask her this. But Ron, what if the Bears lose on Sunday? What if they get the number 1 pick in the draft? They've got Justin Fields, one of the best running quarterbacks of all time. Would they consider taking a quarterback with the number 1 overall pick, CJ Stroud, maybe coming off an unbelievable performance in the bowl game, even though they lost? What do you think about that?
Well, the one thing, if they were to draft CJ Stroud, you have 2 Ohio State quarterbacks now in your meeting room. Would CJ Stroud be willing to sit? Because I think Justin Fields is probably under contract for 2 more years. So would CJ Stroud be willing to sit for 2 years and to figure out if Justin Fields is the guy? And then if he is not the guy, then they have CJ Stroud waiting, kind of like the 49ers were trying to do when they had Jimmy Garoppolo, and then they made their draft pick of Trey Lance. I don't know why they would do that. But again, teams have done dumber things. Like, you just never know. If CJ Stroud was like a Justin Fields type of pick later, 2nd round, 3rd round, or sorry, Jalen Hurts, 2nd round, 3rd round, I'd say yes for sure. Because then you put a really good quarterback as a backup to your really good quarterback that you think you can get things going. But here's where I go with the Bears. I don't think they know what type of team they are. Like, they are the number 1 running offense in the NFL when you think about production-wise. The Eagles throw a little bit better than them because they have A.J. Brown. The Bears don't have receivers. So I honestly feel like the Bears, looking at when you look at the Eagles and what the Eagles have done with A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. I truly think the Bears know because they got Chase Claypool. And I think they're going to try to find another receiver. I could see them getting that number 1 pick and using it for a ton of capital. So when you look at the Eagles and you think about what the Eagles have done with their offense and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith, I truly believe that the Bears got Chase Claypool because they knew they needed offense. They traded away a lot of defensive guys. When you look at Khalil Mack, their goal is going to be to go get a receiver. So I think they trade that pick for a ton of draft capital. Going to look at what teams have some picks that are multiple. So you got the Lions. I don't know if the Lions would help the Bears out like that, but the Lions have multiple first-round picks. Maybe the Lions want the first-round pick because they want a quarterback. I mean, I don't know if Jared Goff's their guy. Maybe the Lions want to go get number 1 and get C.J. Stroud. Now, do the Bears want to help the Lions go get C.J. Stroud? So that's where you got to play that game of like if giving up C.J. Stroud to the Lions is worth us having 2 picks, maybe. But I could see the Bears doing something like that, getting 2 early picks, going to get an offensive lineman, and then going to get a receiver because they clearly want to build this offense around Justin Fields and his ability to run. And if Jalen Hurts can do it, I feel like Justin Fields can because he has done some stuff that is really good.
New buzzer that I came up with. Yeah, Ron, I think they're in a huge decision point for their franchise, right? Because they've got this new GM.
Mm-hmm.
They just discovered what this quarterback can do. They weren't doing this early in the season. They just figured out how to use Justin Fields. But you're only going to have this one time. You're probably not going to have the number 1 pick or even the top 3 picks 2 years in a row. So you need to decide whether you think Justin Fields can expand the passing part of his game. Because if he can't, I don't know if you can survive on just his legs. It's a big decision for them. You've got so many assets. You've got $100 million in cap space. My guess is the Bears trade that pick and just build up draft capital. They'll go buy a bunch of offensive talent to put around Fields. I don't think they will. But after watching Stroud, I don't know if you saw the game, he's going to make some team super happy in the draft. I think he's really good.
Yeah, he's really good. What you got next?
All right. This was going to be Courtney answering what's one change that you think the Bears should make for next season. What's one change the Vikings should make for next season in Kevin O'Connell's second year? Because Kevin O'Connell, Matt Eberflus, both first-year coaches. What's one big thing you think Kevin O'Connell should do differently in his second year, Ron?
Oh, that's tough because he's probably going to win 13 games this year. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to say what do you change in a 13-win team or season. And this is where I think he should make the change, though. I think the identity really needs to be put out there. Like if you're not going to run the ball in his second season, I think he needs to lay his cards all on the table. Like if it's not, trade Dalvin Cook. Like in his second season, if he wants to truly just be the Rams, you don't need to have a $50 million running back. And I think that's going to be the issue because that money can go towards an offensive lineman to help out Kirk Cousins and blocking. That can go to trading maybe for somebody before the draft because there could be a first round. Like think about all the teams that could use a running back that have a first round pick that would give up. Dalvin Cook is worth a first round pick and then some. Like if I have Dalvin Cook, I'm going to ask for a first and maybe a third round pick and say, hey, who wants Dalvin Cook? Do you want a star running back because you want to run the ball? When you think about, and I would send him to the AFC. I would not let him be in the NFC.
Smart.
I would send him to the AFC. So, whether it's the LA Chargers, who think they need to run the ball a little bit more, the Raiders in Las Vegas, because Josh Jacobs clearly doesn't want to be there anymore. If I'm them, I'm going to look at a team where I know what I want, which is I want to go get a really good offensive lineman in the first round. I don't need a receiver. I got KJ Osborne. I got Justin Jefferson. I got Alexander Madison. I got TJ Hockenson because you can't pay TJ Hockenson if you still got Dalvin Cook, and you got to pay Justin Jefferson probably $200 million at some point. In the second season, honestly, I'm going to lay my cards out on the table and tell the world I am a passing team. I don't need a star running back. And I think that's what he has to figure out. And same with, and unfortunately, then that leads you to, what do you do with your fullback? Like, do you keep a fullback? Do you have multiple running backs on the roster and multiple tight ends and receivers? Like, or do you have 10 offensive linemen because your guys keep getting hurt? Like, he's got to lay the cards on the table and really prove what his offense is going to be in the second season because he inherited this offense now, but now this offseason, he can truly show the world what his team's going to look like going forward. What do you think?
Is it too rash to say that I wouldn't mind a new defensive coordinator? I mean, I think maybe there's some stuff that Donatell wants to do that his personnel doesn't allow him to do.
Yep.
But to me, I think that's bad coaching. Like, I think that you need to fit the scheme around the personnel, not try to make the personnel fit the scheme.
Correct.
And I think if you switch and if you have to learn some new stuff next year, it's not like your defense is going to be worse because you are already one of the worst. So I would actually make a change there. That would be, and that's going to be tough. Like, imagine a young head coach having to go stare at a 63-year-old guy and tell him that he's fired after 1 year. I wouldn't want to have that conversation. So I get why
that's
it
what
wouldn't
Quasey's
happen.
for.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, have someone else do the dirty work because that sounds terrible. But I would, at this point, I would like to see something different.
Right. And I agree with that. I do see a Danielle Hunter line up wide in the slot covering Christian Watson. Yeah, no, that can't ever happen again. That can't ever happen again.
Danielle's athletic, but he's not. Yeah, he's not.
He's not covering nobody. No.
The last one. All right. So looking at the wild card picture as it stands now, which wild card team do you think is the most dangerous in the playoffs? You can go AFC, you can go NFC. So just to give you the updated playoff picture, that would be the Chargers, Baltimore, and the Patriots in the AFC. And then the NFC would be Cowboys, Giants, and at the moment, Seahawks, but that could also be the Packers or the Lions.
So I'm going with the team that is not in there, and I think the most dangerous of all that list is the Packers to me. I feel like the Packers would be the most dangerous wild card team. I feel like they're a team that can beat anybody. They're clicking at the right moment. His receivers are catching balls at the right moments now. He's got Randall Cobb back healthy. Their defense is good. Jair Alexander is when you are that confident at corner, that's what you need. Like, if you think about all the top corners back in the day, it was confidence. Darrelle Revis, he knew Revis Island was a thing. Like, you're not going to make a catch on me over here. Like, you can keep coming my way. Jalen Ramsey, when he was at his top, like, you can't go his way. We already know Deion Sanders' swagger was on 100,000 billion. When corners are feeling like he's feeling, when you're grittying after breaking up a pass, your swag is up. Like, his swag meter is on high. So I'm scared of the Packers. Like, I think they're the most dangerous team. I think they're a team at a 7 seed that can make it to the Super Bowl, because when you look at the NFC, they can beat every single team. You match them up against you match the Packers up against the Cowboys. Give me the Packers. You match the Packers up against the 49ers. Give me the Packers. You match the Packers up against the Eagles right now. Give me the Packers. You give me the Packers versus the Vikings. I'm taking the Packers. So the Packers are the most dangerous team in the NFC. And when you look at the AFC to me always seems like the little brother at times. Like, they just always, it never feels like against each other, they go at it. They look, and then when they play the NFC and they go against some stronger, more tougher opponents, it just seems like they wilt. And so those teams you name, Baltimore, LA, like, none of those teams seem scary to me. But the Packers, to me, even though they're not in, they have a 60. I think right now they say they have a 64% chance of getting in. I just feel like they're the scarier team. I don't know. What about you?
Are we sleeping on the Cowboys at all? This could be a 13-win wild card team, and their only 2 losses since October 16th were in overtime. They're good. They can score a lot of points. That defense is pretty tough. A lot of talent. I think Dallas, and they're going to get probably a declining Tom Brady in the first round. I think they get out of that game, and then they'll go play like maybe the Vikings, maybe the Niners. I think the Cowboys could win anywhere. I think the Cowboys are scary.
The Cowboys, to me, remind me of Tony Romo. The ghost of Tony Romo is still there. I feel like in the playoffs, the Cowboys always found a way around Romo's career to lose. And I just feel like this Cowboys team is set up to do that. They're gonna disappoint their fans. I don't know if it's gonna be a fumble, it's just a bad game. Dak's gonna be in his own head. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if Dak can overcome that and become one of the elite quarterbacks in the groups that everybody talks about, which is Pat Mahomes, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts right now. Seems like he has the clutch gene. I don't feel like Dak has it. I feel like Dak is gonna wilt a little bit in the playoffs. Pat Mahomes he's a man. We know that. He is the man. He has all the, like, if it's down to the wire, he's going at it. So I don't know if Dak and the Cowboys have it, because it's going to be required for him as a quarterback to make a big play. Every playoff moment where quarterbacks have to make it, I don't know if Dak can do it. But that'll do it for the Ron Johnson Show today. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Ekstrom. We want to thank you guys for joining us. I do want to say this, people, continue to pray. Continue to pray, because there's a serious situation going on in the NFL right now with the Buffalo Bills. We know that. Damar Hamlin, everybody talks about, like, oh, like, you know, people get hurt all the time. You never think you're going to die. Like, getting CPR, it's violent. Your ribs break. For players to have to sit there and watch their teammate get CPR on the field just to get a pulse back. Like, he wasn't moving. He wasn't breathing. His heart had stopped. And you're standing there on the field with the guy that you think is dead. That's traumatic. That's very traumatic. And I don't think people understand that. When you look at the guys in war times that saw people die and they have PTSD, that's you're watching a guy die on the field with you in battle. Like, that's traumatic. And so to understand what these players went through, if you don't understand it, you don't have the compassion or empathy. I know in this world, all of us behind the cameras, covering teams, our job sometimes is to be the first one out there. But this was a moment where first didn't matter. Nobody needed to continue to say stuff, come up with ideas in the moment of a guy dying. Because when you have a family member that dies, your first thing is not to tweet out, my mom is dead, or so-and-so just died, or I don't know what we're going to do, but Christmas must go on. You're not tweeting that stuff. You're just going to sit there and you're going to mourn and you're going to think about, is she going to make it out the hospital? And I think that's where we lost it for a little bit, because everybody was arguing now over who is first and who's responsible. But this is a kid fighting for his life. He signed up for football, break ankles, break fingers, concussions, all that stuff they knew. But dying on the field, heartbeat stopping, that's not something that anybody signed up for. And yes, we know that the game is dangerous. You can break your neck and die. But it's just something you don't sign up for. You don't really think it's going to happen. And so that's why it's so traumatic for the other players on the field, because they feel bad. And so as we continue to pray for Damar Hamlin and his family and the Buffalo Bills nation and the Buffalo Bills organization, I want to make sure everybody understands that having compassion, having empathy, it's okay to have that. And it's okay to not be first. You don't have to be the first person to get out there and say something or tweet something out about the situation. Let them deal with it how they're going to deal with it, and they'll tell us when they're ready to tell us what's going on. But please continue to pray for Damar Hamlin and his family. I want to thank you, and have a great day, people.